Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Jordan Doesn't Know Zip about Magic the Gathering with our good friend Simon over there from Aether Hub. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, this is fun. So today we're going to talk about the new book that's coming out in November for D&D, Strixhaven, a curriculum of chaos. And we're gonna go back to school. We're gonna brush up on our Strixhaven lore. We're gonna see why is this an adventure that's being brought over, or why is this a planet, a world that's coming over here, and like what is Strixhaven, and maybe what can players expect and things like that. So when we first started, though, we were first talking about this. You were like, "Well, I know Strixhaven, but what is Wizards of the Coast bringing to the table D&D side?" And I was like, "Oh, you're right."
So I was a little surprised when they announced that Strixhaven was going to be given an adventure in D&D. And not that I know too much about what they're going to do and what their plans are with the stories that they're bringing into D&D, but Strixhaven as a story in Magic the Gathering it's super limited because it's basically Wizards of the Coast answer to Hogwarts. You know, it's literally almost a one-to-one copy of Hogwarts school for wizards and witches.
It's the magical school trope. They're called. It's a trope now, apparently. But yeah,
absolutely, it is that magical school trope, and because of that, it's not like a full-fleshed world as much as you would think it is, and so it's very limited in its scope. Okay. You know, it can't bring too much to a table outside of a school setting, and that's why I think I was like, it's kind of limited. But if you want to build an adventure strictly around that specific, very niche kind of environment, Strixhaven is perfect. But outside of that, well, you're kind of pulling at straws there a little bit. Yeah,
I mean, Harry Potter's popular. I think that magical school is a popular idea. So from my side, I was not very surprised by this. And the Forgotten Realms has all kinds of magical schools. There's, and bards are called, like, I go to the college of this. And so there's, like, this assumed college kind of thing. So, I don't know, it makes sense for me. They actually have changed this quite a bit, though. Originally, you could only play magical classes, I think. So, well, I shouldn't say that. We don't know yet. But they released some playtest material. And one of them was, I'm going to be a bard or a wizard or a cleric. So you're a spell casting character. And then there were like Strixhaven school subclasses. And so even though I'm a bard and a wizard, I could pick the same subclass, which has not been done in 5th edition D&D. Usually if you're a wizard, you could only pick from wizard subclasses. So this idea was that there was a subclass that multiple characters could pull from, or different characters. Like I'm a warlock, I can have the same subclass as this other person. And the feedback was awful. Like, everyone hated it. And
really?
So they pulled that entire system out from what I have been, what I've read on the internet. I actually just found this out a couple days ago, and they're replacing it with a feat system. So in D&D, you have feats, probably much like World of Warcraft or any other game, where at certain levels you're like, oh, I'm going to take the A feat instead of the B feat, and then I get special abilities that kind of make your character feel unique. And D&D has that, but it's kind of like limited in scope, and so we don't know how this is going to work mechanically, and it's kind of interesting. But I don't go ahead. Yeah.
It's really interesting, the whole mixing of classes thing that everyone was up in arms about. I can't speak to the D&D community, so I don't know what gets under their skin, what they do or do not like. But what I will say, it seems pretty fitting for a scenario or a setting like Strixhaven, because colleges and universities or whatever places of education are all about experimentation, finding out what you're into, finding out what you could bring life purpose to, that sort of thing. So I feel like if they wanted to dip their toes into something where you're going to do a lot of experimentation with different class mixing, Strixhaven could have been a perfect place to do it.
Yeah, and I didn't play the material, so I can't say it was good or bad. But on paper, from what I read, I liked it as a concept, because if you... I think of magic as like art sometimes. And if you go to school for painting, this person paints a little different than you do, kind of a thing. And I felt that was reflected in a wizard learns magic differently than a bard does, or a warlock. And so even though you have the same subclass, like we went to the same school together. I just tackle magic in a different way than you, kind of a thing. So I thought it was going to work, but apparently people didn't like it. They said that it was taking away from the uniqueness of being a wizard and the uniqueness of being a bard. So we'll see.
Well, you know what? Good ideas on paper might not be great in practice.
That's true. And, and I didn't play test it, so I shouldn't have the opinion of like, well, we need to keep this because, whatever. And then regardless, the cool thing about the playtest stuff that they release is like, we still have the PDFs. If you want to play that way, you could use those PDFs.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
So in the adventure itself, it's a multi-year campaign. You're going to start as first-year students. You're going to study, socialize, and adventure all the way to graduation. And there are 4 adventures that can be played as standalone adventures or a whole thing together, leveling 1 to 10. And so it kind of sounds like if I'm not playing a Strixhaven specific game, I'm allowed to I'm allowed to do anything I want. But like if I'm not playing a Strixhaven game, I could use this and just plop it into my fantasy world for like, here's the magic school in my world. And I think that's the angle that Wizards of the Coast is going for this, because magical schools are a thing in the world of D&D. So
no, and that actually makes a lot of great sense, because in Magic the Gathering, even though this was like first debuted in MTG, not D&D, the world that Strixhaven, the school, is placed on is not well developed at all.
Yeah.
Strixhaven isn't the name of the plane. In fact, a lot of people, even MTG players, don't even know this, that Strixhaven isn't the plane. It is just the name of the school. The plane is called Arcavios, but that's almost never mentioned. It's very hardly mentioned. The greater world outside of the school's walls isn't really explored in depth. There's little bits and hints of knowledge and trivia here and there, but the overall greater history, the kingdoms, the people of the plane is hardly touched. It is basically just the school.
So how big is the school then? Like, I was thinking it was like a Ravnica, like the school was the planet or something. But
definitely not that big of scale, for sure, not that big. But it's a big focal point for the Magic the Gathering universe, because it is the premier educational institute for magic in the multiverse.
Okay.
And it's well known by planeswalkers as being such. So it's not just like the races of Arcavios think that this is a great school for magic, because it is, but planeswalkers will travel from countless different planes to come to this school. Word has traveled throughout the multiverse that this is the premier education spot if you're learning to become a powerful wizard. It houses a lot of ancient, powerful scrolls, lots of unknown magic that's never really been duplicated. So it's like this focal point of learning for mages, not just on Arcavios, but throughout the multiverse.
So what spells are you learning? Like, how do you learn magic from a Magic the Gathering side? Because we're getting some new spells and things like that within the book, so it makes sense for me. But if I'm a planeswalker and I go to Strixhaven, what are you walking away with? Like,
so it's very, very reminiscent of Harry Potter. You know, you're going to be taking classes. They're going to be in certain disciplines. You'll have semesters. You'll have teachers and mentors, and you'll have upper gradesmen, upperclassmen. A lot of the university tropes that you'll see, there'll be sporting events, college teams, competitions, those sort of things, extracurricular activities, all that kind of stuff will kind of come together. It's funny because in the actual game mechanic itself, you don't really see a strong tie a lot of the times in Magic the Gathering between aesthetic and mechanics. They kind of just like, they come up with the theme, and then the mechanic will just have a name that's reminiscent of that theming. But in Strixhaven, there was a cool mechanic called Lessons Learned, and it really harps back on that. You're learning how to use a new spell by doing a lesson, and then you learn that spell. So the mechanic works that you'll have a card with the keyword, I believe, learn on it. And then that triggers that you can literally learn a spell that's not even in your hand, just one that you have on this, outside of the game, as they say. That's a quote unquote a lesson card, and you get that spell. So when you learn, you get, or when you learn a lesson,
Yeah.
you learn those spells. It's that kind of weird mechanic that mixes very well with the theme that they're going for.
Right, and to put that into perspective, like the for Adventures in the Forgotten Realms Magic the Gathering set has the delve into the dungeon mechanic, and that's a similar thing where they created a system to work in the card game that reflects D&D, like helps match the setting. So yeah.
Okay. And it's never going to be a perfect one-to-one comparison. It's never going to feel like you're literally in a Dungeons and Dragons dungeon or adventure fully, but at least it pulls on those heartstrings a little bit. It gives it a little taste of it.
So what is the storyline of Strixhaven? Like, how does it, I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's a big question, but how does it land in the weird multiverse of everything?
So there's two real ways to kind of look at the lore of Strixhaven. There's the physical story that takes place over the course of the Magic the Gathering set, which if you guys are interested in, you can go to my channel, YouTube/EtherHub. I did a whole rundown of more in-depth, kind of breakdown of the stories that occurred there, or you can go to Wizard of the Coast website. They have the free online articles if you want to read them yourself. But you have those events that happen, specific characters interacting and going through events. And then you have the overarching history of Strixhaven on the world of Arcavios. So I'm going to keep it really brief. I'm not going to try and talk anyone's ear off with the entire story, but I'll give you guys a quick synopsis. So the world of Arcavios was brought together with a bunch of different mana pairings kind of clashing with each other. Basically, two worlds collided, and then Arcavios kind of was like the result. In that mad mix of mana, 5 elder dragons were born. And elder dragons are a specific race of dragons that are ultra powerful. They're not just like a normal drake or dragon. They're magically inclined dragons. And these 5 dragons saw these mortal races kind of spring up around them, and they started to use the magic that they had created, So these mortals were bumbling around, using spells, causing calamities because they just didn't know how to control that magic. So the Elder Dragons got together and were like, all right, we'll make a school so all these mortal races can learn how to use magic properly. If they're going to steal our magic, at least be responsible with it. So these 5 Elder Dragons, they created the 5 houses or schools of magic found in Strixhaven. There is Galazeth Prismari, Beladros Witherbloom, Shadrix Silverquill, Tanazir Quandrix, and Velmachus Lorehold. These are the 5 Elder Dragons that founded Strixhaven. Very
Harry Potter-ish with their house names.
Oh my god, yeah, absolutely. Very grand, very fantastical names.
Yeah.
But the schools of Strixhaven reflect those founders, so they don't have the full names, but you have the Prismari, Witherbloom, Silverquill, Quandrix, and the Lorehold colleges. And that's what Strixhaven was. It was founded to keep mortals from basically abusing magic and learning how to use it properly. And the Elder Dragons wanted to give them that tool. So outside of that, the story that takes place in the actual Magic the Gathering set, Strixhaven, is kind of complicated and involves a lot of characters who have a lot of development over the course of several sets. Okay. But in just a quick little synopsis of it.
Go ahead, but I'll put it out there that if you are interested, I'll put some links to a playlist or something down below, and you can definitely check out.
There's gonna be a lot of names here that you're gonna be like, wait, who? But the main characters are two twin planeswalkers named Will and Rowan Kenrith. They're pretty young, like basically like teenager, young adult age range. In the story, relatively speaking, they're young planeswalkers, so their spark just ignited pretty recently. And so they get invited to Strixhaven because they're new planeswalkers by another planeswalker named Kazmina, who is more like a mentor to other planeswalkers. In secret, she has this shadowy organization that is trying to prepare for this oncoming calamity that no one knows about. And they've been teasing this for a long time, but it's suspected that she's trying to recruit Will and Rowan as soon as they learn enough to join her shadowy organization. But she kind of pulls them in and say, hey, you guys are young. I see promise here. Come to Strixhaven. And they do. They enroll and they become students. They join the Prismari school. And all throughout, there's this organization that's looking to overthrow the school itself. It's led by a guy named Extus. who has a grudge because the school kicked him out for not being that great. In fact, he was actually a really, really good student. He just didn't feel like he was given the enough props for his status.
Oh, okay.
He was really good, but he wasn't king of the school.
Yeah.
So he was like, forget this. So he gets mad and wants to burn down the school now. Really cool motivation.
Yeah.
It's great, right? So he gets other, miscreants and outcasts to join his cause, and they're called the Auric, and they're trying to plunder the school, steal some powerful spells, and overthrow the school. As you would know, Will and Rowan learn a lot, and they rise up to this threat, and that's all she wrote.
Yeah.
That's the gist of the story.
Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting. So, and then we were just talking how Strixhaven is like the center of this magical learning. So it's got a very important place in the multiverse.
Correct. Yeah.
Now, I was curious. We have these houses: Silverquill, Prismari, Witherbloom, and they're all two types of mana. Like Witherbloom is green and black.
Yes.
So, why not? You have 5 colors of magic in 5 schools. Why were they not just the 5 colors straight up? I mean, I guess that's a design choice that you don't have the answer to. But is there a reason of combining these? Like, was that?
Yeah. So what Wizards of the Coast likes to do with Magic the Gathering is bring identities into the game itself to make players make players connect more with the cards that they're playing with. This is kind of how they superimpose story and a feeling of connection to the game that you're playing without, making it too forceful. So color pairings, of course, there is a mechanical component to it.
Yeah.
If they just made every set, okay, here's the 5 colors of mana, we're going to have all those 5 be the primary plays, it's going to get boring pretty quickly. So when you bring in other colors of mana and combinations of mana, it spices up things. It makes it more difficult to cast these spells because you're looking for 2 different mana sources rather than just 1.
Okay.
So it adds a little bit more complexity to it, but this is not an uncommon thing. Color pairings have been in Magic for a long time. In fact, even the schools in Strixhaven are actually copied and pasted from the guilds of Ravnica. So they actually have the same exact color pairings at the guilds of Ravnica. So rather than the Witherbloom, you'll have the Golgari on Ravnica.
That's
it's literally a one-to-one comparison.
Okay.
But for Strixhaven, they're trying to bring that component of what kind of student were you? What kind of crowd did you roll with?
Yeah.
When you were in high school or college or whatever, and you have the Witherbloom who are they were biology majors. They know everything about plant life, animals, the cycle of life and death, that sort of thing. They were potion masters, alchemists, almost like doctors in a way. The Silverquill are kind of the weirdest of the bunch, at least in my opinion. They're English majors. They're poets, orators.
Okay.
People who use the spoken and written language to perform spells, and they summon these weird ink elementals, which I don't understand too much, but they use the written language. They love debating, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You have the Lorehole College, which is my preferred college.
Oh.
It's right in the name, lore. They're architects, historians, keepers of records, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So lots of spelunking sort of adventuring sort of college. You have the Prismari, who are the art students. They use visual and dance, acting, music to express themselves. They all about expressing yourself, and they use those mediums to perform their magic. Mm-hmm. And then the Quandrix, they are the math nerds, all about number crunching, duplication. They create these fractal elementals that are literally equations given physical form.
That's
so if
cool.
you're a math nerd, you're gonna love the Quandrix.
There was a old 2nd edition monster for Dungeons and Dragons that was a math equation, and I wonder if it'll make a reappearance here. And it was something it was 2-dimensional, and it was really hard to kill because you had to divide it a certain way. I don't remember off the top of my head, but the minute you said that, I was like, "That's cool."
D&D cooks up some crazy monsters.
Yes,
man.
Yes, they do. Not just the owlbear. There's some other crazy stuff out there. Is this meant to be serious and world impending kind of a thing, or is the storyline, is it tongue-in-cheek? Is it kind of like, we're in a magical school, like, or I don't know.
Yeah. So it honestly, it's a weird kind of relationship here, because if you go back and look at the promotional material for Strixhaven, everything was tongue-in-cheek.
Okay.
Everything was super campy. Everything was lighthearted. It was cheesy to the max, and the whole concept is lighthearted in itself.
Yeah.
Much like Harry Potter is the idea of a wizarding school for young kids to go and learn to be mages and all that kind of stuff. It's very cheesy and campy and just fun. But just like Harry Potter, there is an underscore of tension and darkness that kind of overtakes the school. The Elder Dragons, for example, are almost tyrannical in a sense.
Oh, they're still running the place then, yeah.
They have a hands-off approach to the school, so they're still around, and they check in from time to time, but it's run by administrators, essentially. But the dragons do come and help out in the storyline. But still, they founded that school to make sure mortals didn't use too much of their magic. It was essentially a leash on them to ensure their own safety, in a sense. Now, you wouldn't say they're necessarily evil or anything, but they are, in a sense... Yeah. They're controlling.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of the storyline, was that the Auric really believed that the school represented oppression more than anything else. It wasn't freedom to learn. It was an oppressive force. It created a caste system of the upper ups who graduated from Strixhaven and had all this privilege and promise. And then the lower class who were farmers that didn't have those opportunities. So there are undertones of a darker sort of socioeconomic status there,
and that makes for really good stories, because I like it when a villain, I might not disagree with his methods, but there's a part of you that's like, yeah, I can see why you're upset,
To be clear, Extus, the main villain of that set, terrible writing. He literally was like, oh my god, I wasn't praised enough, I'm gonna blow up the school. Really two-dimensional kind of character with almost no real motivation. And honestly, it's really up to individual players in D&D when they take this environment to add what they want. You can be campy and you can say, hey, we're going to have a school and we're going to have problems like, can I find a date? Am I going to be able to have a study partner for this project? Who's going to be someone who's presenting with me? You can have real, like, kind of student problems like those, or you can deal with real issues like the first of the class is a real jerk, and he's, poo-pooing on everyone else in his class for being less than him. You can be campy, or you can be a little bit more serious. At least it gives you the freedom to explore that.
Yeah. So they're bringing this to Dungeons & Dragons. Ravnica was a very popular set. I don't actually know if Theros was really popular. Is that considered like really cool? No. Don't get me wrong. Theros is amazing. I can't say there's many players who don't like Theros as a set. It just happens that when we returned to Theros, it was really exciting because it was our first time returning to a set that people were it was really popular. Okay.
Everyone loved the idea of the gods and the world of Theros was very well fleshed out. Like, it's not like Strixhaven where it's, highly focused on one aspect of the world.
Right.
Theros is a full-fleshed world with different, kingdoms and gods and the whole rule system on how those gods operate. Everything was great. But when they returned to Theros, it should have been an exciting time, but that was right after the huge Magic the Gathering, like, lore calamity.
Okay.
The debacle that was War of the Spark, and it actually caused them to stop writing a story for this Theros Return set. So we quite literally got zero lore for that set.
Oh, okay.
They just released the cards, and there was no more real building. They just said, hey, here's 2 paragraphs of what happens. We wish we could have brought you a book, but we didn't feel like it. So it kind of left a sour taste in people's mouth. But Theros as a world is extremely popular still. Despite that.
So then, is Strixhaven as popular as Theros or Ravnica to warrant this D&D book? Like, did you like you're looking at all the different worlds of Magic the Gathering, and you're kind of like, okay, pretty sure the next one's going to be this, or was Strixhaven like way on the bottom and came out of left field?
So it definitely came out of left field to me, simply because Strixhaven is so new. It didn't have the time. It hasn't had the time to cement itself as a staple plane in a lot of players' minds. Usually it takes a couple years for a plane to be like, this is my favorite plane. This is when I started playing Magic. I have a lot of fond memories of Strixhaven. But they moved right on to making this a D&D adventure. So I assume there's a little bit more of a business motivation for that rather than it being a purely popularity, thing. For me personally, Strixhaven isn't my favorite world because I really put a lot of value on world building, and I feel like that was absent in Strixhaven. They built the school perfectly fine, and it's serviceable for what it is, but it left a lot of the rest of the world to be desired, and I don't want to hang my hat on just a school setting. I feel like there's a little too niche for what I'm looking for in a set.
Yeah, like you were saying, there's a whole planet there. I mean, they could have done a lot more with all of that, I guess, rather than just focus on the school. So
absolutely. So if you were asking me, is Strixhaven my favorite set, and if I wanted to see it in a D&D adventure, I would say I'm a little surprised, and I didn't expect it. There's other ones on my list that's far surpassed that, let's just say.
Well, and then I guess this will be my last question. What Magic the Gathering world do you want to bring to D&D? Like, which one do you... I'll do a twofold question. Which one do you think is... best suited to be part of a D&D campaign or world, I guess, like storytelling wise, and then which one are you just like, but I just want to see this, like I just want to they should bring that over.
All right, cool. Those are two great questions, and I have two answers, so this is great.
Okay.
I'm not going to just use the same answer for both. I'm not sure if there is a D&D adventure for this set yet, or for this plane, and I would be surprised if there isn't, but Innistrad. Have you ever heard of Innistrad?
Yes.
Is there a D&D adventure for Innistrad?
So they when Wizards of the Coast released 5th edition, they released these little free supplements that were like, here's how to kind of change the rules to play in certain planes. And Innistrad was one of them. Okay. And I think they were testing the waters to see if this would be a popular thing for like an actual book, which is what they ended up doing with Ravnica. But correct me if I'm wrong, Innistrad is vampires and spooky scary time, right?
Yeah, pretty much, yep.
And we have an equivalent of that in Ravenloft, which is a classic setting that was expanded upon a whole bunch. And we actually just got a book called Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, which talks about all the different settings. And it's there's vampires, there's Frankenstein monsters, there's werewolves, there's undead things everywhere. So it's kind of, it's like the sun never comes out. It's always cloudy and dark,
Gotcha. So what you described to me is basically Innistrad.
Yeah, so I don't think they would bring the two over probably because it's so close to that if you wanted to run an Innistrad game, you could probably just rework Ravenloft for that. So
that's so funny because when I was thinking of possible D&D adventures, I was like, Innistrad is like literally the most idyllic D&D world.
Yeah.
So, and it's like that, and I think like that because I guess it already does exist, technically speaking. So, but I love that gothic horror kind of aspect. I just love, it's like, just grim and dark and gritty, and you have this collection of humans that are like huddled in a church, praying to angels, hoping for protection, all that sort of stuff. I love that so much, so I thought that would be a good one to be done, but it looks like it's already been done. So if I'm going to say what I would like to see in a D&D adventure...
Yeah, so you haven't played a lot of D&D, but like if you were just like, man, I love this setting, it would be fun to like run around as the little character in that. Like, I don't know.
It would probably be a toss-up between the worlds of Mirrodin and Lorwyn. Okay. So Mirrodin, actually it goes by a new name now called New Phyrexia. It's an artificial world, completely artificially made by a planeswalker long ago. It's made out of metal. And it used to just have metal plants and metal machines, like just little metallic guys running about. And then a machine goes nuts and brings in, real organic life onto this metallic world. And centuries of evolution takes place, and the biological life starts to merge with the metallic
Okay.
nature of this world, and then so you get like these half machine, half flesh kind of things, and then that even gets corrupted further by Phyrexians, who it's basically a disease. You know, it's a flesh machine mixed disease that corrupts machinery and flesh and makes these weird, you know, cyborg type things, with a singular kind of mind and goal to spread or complete the multiverse in perfection. And their idea of perfection is, if you're more machine than flesh, then you're getting there. You know, we're gonna perfect the world and make it all one big old machine.
Yeah.
So that's what currently it's exactly like that. So the world is currently the housing, like the base of operation for these new Phyrexians.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking to expand throughout the multiverse right now. In fact, that's going to be the next big major story in MTG. It's the rise of New Phyrexia. So that would be good. But other than that, Lorwyn is one of my favorite sets of all time. It's actually the set that I started playing Magic the Gathering like around that time. It's a world that's like almost idyllic, Lord of the Rings-esque. There's like hobbits and like everything is really, really nice. There's fairies and all this, you know, hobgoblin kind of stuff. Nothing's too serious, but the world goes through this weird ebb and flow. They have a day and night cycle that is like hundreds of years long, like centuries long. When it's daytime, everything's great and good. When it's nighttime, it transforms into a whole different plane called Shadowmoor that is darker, grim, desolate. Everyone is basically pissed off all the time. Like all the hobbits in this Lorwyn set go from being cheerful and offering you a cup of ale to trying to stab you in the back for whatever pennies you have in your pocket. It's a really interesting sort of world, and I love that day and night kind of like 180 essentially. And the whole world is affected by it. It's not just local. It's like the whole world gets shifted into a darker reality.
That's interesting. Yeah, that would be cool. I'm gonna have to read up more on that for sure.
Yeah,
because that gives me a lot of ideas for campaigns of my own. Simon, thank you so much for doing another video with me. If you guys should all check out his channel 100%. There's links down below. And if you guys like this, which we actually have a lot of fun talking about this, so I think we're gonna do more of these regardless. But I should have you back on, and maybe we'll do a deep dive on Theros. That would be kind of interesting because you were really passionate about it, and that would be really cool to talk about it. Even though it's an older book, I think that would be a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yes, we'll do a quick shout out for your channel and all that jazz, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure, guys, you can find my channel. It's youtube.com/etherhub. I have a bunch of Magic the Gathering related lore videos on that channel if you want to catch up and maybe take some of those ideas and put it into your D&D campaign. You can also follow me on Twitter @SimonLore if you guys want to see me tweet random card stuff from time to time.
Yes, sounds great. Thank you again, and we'll see you guys all in the next video.
All right, bye.